I can't be the only one that sees all of this and thinks we already did this. I mean, yeah, I know it's a dead topic by now, but we really like talking about writing women. And while I'm not gonna act like I'm some great writer and I know everything there is to know about writing, especially writing for women, I do think it is interesting that in almost all of these videos, whenever people try to bring up positive examples of writing for women, they always forget one show. This is My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic, an animated kids show that was a runaway hit when it came out back in 2010, and a show that, as we know, found a different audience than it was likely intending. This was a show I grew up with, but being only 12 at the time and growing up in a Christian conservative household meant I had almost no connection to the brony fandom. I know I have to talk about bronies. Okay, I'm talking about My Little Pony. I have to talk about bronies, but I really had no connection to anybody around me that even knew that I watched the show. I was heavily in the closet. I'm just saying that because if I don't address the whole brony situation, I know people are going to ask me about it, and I don't want to talk about that. I just want to talk about this amazing show. Because yeah, this show is amazing. Created by the impeccable Lauren Faust, who's the creator of such amazing shows as Powerpuff Girls and Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. My Little Pony Generation 4, or simply My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic, was such a runaway hit because it had the ability to tap into all age groups and genders. Basically, studios only think of 4 types of people whenever they're making a movie or show or whatever. There is men and there is women, and there is under 25 and there is over 25. Many stories can only appeal to one side of this quadrant. Some can appeal to 2 or 3, but the really magical pieces of media, in my opinion, are the ones that can appeal to all 4. This is how you get something like Avatar: The Last Airbender or Puss in Boots: The Last Wish.
Show me a good time, Jack!
Or My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic. The show appeals to everybody, but that doesn't really seem natural for a show called My Little Pony. And nowhere is this more evident than the characters. And sure, now I could rattle off about all of the main 6 characters. Main 6. And how well each of them work as great archetypical but subversive children's cartoon characters. But you saw the title of this video. You know there's only one character I want to talk about.
Legalize nuclear bombs.
Swag.
Twilight Sparkle is the central protagonist of basically the entire run of My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic. She's an incredibly powerful but dorky and kind of nerdy unicorn, who mostly enjoys spending her time learning new spells or in books than out there meeting people. But there's also one key trait of Twilight Sparkle. She's a girl boss. Now you might be asking, what is a girl boss? And that's a bit of a hot topic because nobody really knows. And the only way people really use it is as a derogatory name for a lot of female protagonists in big budget movies like Disney movies. However, this term doesn't just have to be derogatory, because I think Twilight Sparkle shows us that you can actually do a lot with this type of character. But again, this brings us back to the central question. What is a girl boss? How are we defining this type of character? Well, to me, a girl boss has 3 key character traits or plot points that they have to hit. Number 1, a girl boss must always be underestimated or looked down upon by the people around her. Number 2, the story must conclude with the girl boss rising above their station to become some powerful general or leader or president person.
Race solo.
And lastly, number 3, the girl boss's power must come from some inner force, some inner power, something that comes from inside them that they must unlock. With each of these key character traits in mind, it's very easy to see how a less skilled writer can make a, let's just say, unsatisfying character with these character traits. If we know that a girl boss must rise to a powerful position, but you fail to make that character likable, it will ring incredibly hollow. If a girl boss's power must come from within, but they are never challenged, then the conflict feels stale, and so on and so forth. However, if we look at the long run of My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic, and specifically the Twilight-centric episodes and her overall arc, we can see that she uses these character traits but in an actually positive way. And I'm gonna prove it. So come on and take a ride with me. This is Twilight Sparkle, the ultimate girl boss. Now, before we get into all of like the girl boss things that I just mentioned, I feel like we should probably set the stage for who Twilight Sparkle is. Twilight Sparkle is a unicorn from the incredibly snobbish city of Canterlot. She likes to read and cast spells and hates the smell of cigarettes and alcohol. She also happens to work directly under the queen of the entire land of Equestria. They don't exactly get into the political weeds when it comes to this stuff. But nevertheless, Twilight still works as the librarian for Princess Celestia. This is how we're introduced to Twilight in the first episode. She is a very shy and very committed bookworm who really doesn't make time for anybody around her. I mean, hell, the whole point of the first scene is to show us Twilight completely rebuffing her supposed friends to go back to her place and study. And this is the part of the video where the analysis takes a bit of a turn, as I'm not just going to describe who Twilight is anymore. We're going to get into her actual character arc. You see, the first 2 episodes of the series start with our little ponies having to go on a quest to discover and find the elements of harmony and stop the big bad villain Nightmare Moon. Again, the show is made for children. And if you don't know anything about this series and you just watch this 2-parter off rip, you'll notice something. Twilight's kind of a little piece of shit. She's constantly insulting the people around her, placing herself above them, abandoning them, and overall just being a very rude and annoying character. But this is the point. You see, what this 2-parter really is about is Twilight discovering that friendship is magic.
Hey, that's the name of the show.
The elements of harmony don't need to be unlocked or discovered through some magic spell that she can learn. It's through the connections that she makes with her friends that she met, like, just yesterday. Again, the show is made for children. They're able to defeat Nightmare Moon, and in the process they also learn that Nightmare Moon is the sister of Princess Celestia, the overall queen, which is weird that she's not called Queen Celestia. Regardless, this theme of friendship is reinforced as Princess Celestia forgives her sister, and the newly crowned Princess Luna begins a path of redemption. But let's go back to Twilight. Me explaining this 2-parter really isn't doing it justice. I'd recommend watching it if you haven't already. It's a good place to start with the series. But it's clear the whole point of it is to give Twilight a core character flaw to overcome over the course of a story. Twilight does not believe friendship is important at the beginning, and she does by the end. And she goes through a whole journey, this whole quest to save the princess, and by the end she recognizes what she needs to change about her own thinking. This is a flaw of hers, and it gets resolved by the end. And I mean, it's not like this is where it ends. We have several episodes later on down the line where Twilight regresses in several ways. The writers take a very interesting approach to how they create her flaws, and it's not that they just manufacture things for her to be bad at. Everything about her personality comes from her core character traits, and character traits can be both good and bad, but they always have to come from a mutual place. In the original draft of this video, I was going to have a whole section where I talked about the concept of character flaws, since that's something that's absent from some girl bosses. But I don't think it's about characters just having flaws, but about those flaws feeling natural to them. Some of my favorite characters, Joel Miller, Annabeth Chase, Makoto Nijima, these are characters that have flaws that are extensions of their characters. This is something that really needs to be done when you're crafting a good character. It's not about just saying, oh, give your characters flaws, because most writers kind of know that. It's about taking your already established character and asking how their behavior could influence positive and negative things. What if your character was someone forced to grow up too fast, having to become the surrogate mother to everyone around them? Well, then they might be a bit nagging or overly dramatic. Perhaps their motherly instincts drive them to help others or see the best in people, even when it's not true. Perhaps your character has clairvoyant powers. What would that do to them? Perhaps they would become apathetic towards others. After all, they can see when and how everyone around them will die. There's no point in feeling anything because you already know what will happen. What if your character's a super smart inventor who's willing to think outside of the box? Well, then they might look at things analytically, finding solutions to problems and just being overly curious, looking for the simplest or safest outcome. However, this can lead them to putting misguided faith in others, believing that since peace is the simplest option, that's what others want. And this happens with Twilight too. For instance, Season 2, Episode 3, Lesson 0 takes a rather interesting approach to this idea. In this episode, Twilight begins to go around the magical town of Ponyville talking to her friends and trying to find what's wrong with this episode. What's the lesson that the ponies are going to learn? After all, she does have to send a brand new friendship lesson she learns to the princess to show that she's growing. But as she begins to walk around the town, she realizes that everybody's kind of just doing alright. All her friends are just fine and there are no problems. So naturally, this freaks Twilight out. This entire episode isn't only a clever meta joke about how the ponies have to learn some kind of new lesson at the end of every episode. It's also an incredible way of pushing Twilight's character further. It shows that she still has places to go, as once Twilight finds out that there are no problems in the town, she goes kinda crazy and tries to create problems for her to solve, which of course goes badly. This of course naturally leads into the actual lesson of the episode, which is that Twilight needs to take a chill pill and not view these friendship lessons as like school assignments. This isn't only a great lesson, but also a great expansion of Twilight's character, since now Twilight's overthinking is being transplanted into her friendship assignments. Twilight was always somebody who was prone to overthinking and stressing out about assignments. That hasn't gone away. Instead, that flaw has now developed into her new goal in life, which is learning about friendship. This is how you write flaws in characters. It's not just about them having flaws, it's about those flaws informing or being informed by the character. Now that we have a better grasp of who Twilight Sparkle is, let's get into the little traits that I mentioned before about what makes a girl boss. Starting with the first trait I mentioned earlier, they are always underestimated or otherwise looked down upon. Isolating this trait by itself is not too strange, considering there are a lot of characters that fall into this category. Harry Potter, Peter Parker, Izuku Midoriya, basically any of the main character guys in superhero stories. Making your character look down upon gives them easy conflict. Also, it's easy to relate to that, since I think everybody has almost universally had an experience where somebody looks down upon them, and we all know that doesn't feel good. However, using that character trait and that general storytelling idea isn't really how you can get a problem with this. It's what the character does in response to this. And a good example of how to use this trait in a positive way is Twilight Sparkle. There are several antagonistic characters that oppose and look down upon our little ponies, but by far the most interesting one, and the one that I would like to talk about, is Trixie. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me.
Great and powerful Trixie!
Trixie is a minor antagonist that shows up in the first couple seasons. She's basically like if Zatanna had a weird horse baby with Saul Goodman. Better call Trixie. After being run out of town for being exposed as a fraud unicorn that uses sleight of hand rather than genuine magic, Trixie returns in the episode Magic Duel to seek revenge on the town, and specifically Twilight, since she was the one who ran her out of town. Trixie's now equipped with this Pack-a-Punch pendant, the Alicorn amulet that's gold-plated, got 100 headshots with it, Black Ops 2, you know. She's now the most powerful unicorn in the land, and she is now the one that drives Twilight out of town. Ashamed and embarrassed, Twilight retreats into the Everfree Forest, where she runs into the local witch alchemist lady, Zecora. Oh, and don't ask why there's only one zebra character in this whole show. Twilight then begins a whole shonen training arc to try and learn how to level up her magic to beat Trixie. But no matter what she does, she can't seem to overcome how powerful the amulet makes Trixie. As long as she's wearing it, Twilight can't defeat her. And what does Twilight do in response? Does she throw a temper tantrum? Does she break down and start crying? Does she give up? No. She starts using her head. When we meet up with Twilight and Trixie next, they're in the middle of another magic duel, this time Twilight having a brand new amulet that is apparently way stronger than Trixie's. The two begin to exchange spells, and Trixie quickly realizes that that amulet is no joke. Twilight is casting spells she didn't even think was possible. I mean, she's literally got the transgender beam. After Twilight clearly proves she's much stronger than Trixie, Trixie begins to play dirty. Trixie steals Twilight's amulet, gets rid of her old one, and is ready to dominate the town yet again. Except that's exactly what Twilight was hoping she'd do. You see, that amulet that Twilight was wearing was actually just a doorstop that gave her no magical abilities, and her plan was just to trick Trixie into thinking that it was more powerful so she'd take off the old amulet. She was only able to do those incredibly powerful spells by using some cool sleight of hand tricks and some assistance from her friends. Or I guess it'd be sleight of hoof, huh?
Oh, brother, this guy
The very kind of tricks Trixie used so long ago to make people think that she was a powerful unicorn. When Twilight realized her magic wasn't good enough, she decided to weaponize her enemy's own skills against her. Rather than just brute forcing her way through the problem, Twilight must be teachable and approachable, not just by the likes of Sakura, but by her friends as well, whom she needs to rely on. Because, friendship is magic.
Hey, that's the name of the show.
This is only one example of the kinds of things we see Twilight do in these circumstances. When Twilight and all of her friends have their magic stolen and have no way of chasing the bad guy, they just have to trust in their allies and their other friends to help them. When Twilight's trapped by the evil King Sombra and can't get to the magical MacGuffin thingy, she needs to trust and believe in her partner Spike to save the day. Twilight's problem solving and her approach to those around her that would look down upon her is always to try and solve the problem, even if it's not how she would personally solve it. She always accepts influence and believes in her friends. And this is what you want to do with a character who has this trait. Ask yourself, how would they solve these kinds of problems? Trixie has a big ego because of the amulet, because of the power that it gives her, so she's less willing to even think that Twilight might even try and trick her, especially when Twilight has been such a straightforward person. Twilight understands this and thus must think outside of the box, coming up with a smart solution that uses the fact that her enemy is underestimating her against them. And that's how you write a satisfying conclusion to a character who is underestimated. So the next aspect of being a girl boss that we need to talk about is the fact that all girl bosses need to rise above their station to become some powerful person. This could be getting some kind of job promotion, or elevating their status in some way, or just dominating somebody who previously was superior to them. The kind of story you're telling will influence the kind of ways your story and your characters grow over time. And this is absolutely something we see happen to Twilight in the Season 3 finale, Magical Mystery Cure. This revolves around a strange spell that Twilight accidentally casted that causes all of her friends' cutie marks, the little butt tattoos that give them their power, to all be swapped around. This radically changes their memories and their histories and how they even think about themselves, as they have new passions in life that they can't really do. Fluttershy, the shy and awkward dork, is trying to entertain people as the party pony that Pinkie Pie was. And Pinkie Pie is trying to take care of Applejack's farm, and Applejack is trying to make dresses. All these characters are now trying to do things that their cutie marks are telling them, but aren't actually accurate to who they are or what they're good at. Twilight's the only one who remembers what things were like beforehand because she was the one who casted the spell. Twilight then begins to look for a solution to this problem, and she's able to find it with, surprise, surprise, the magic of friendship. By having two friends help each other out and motivate them to pursue passions that they technically aren't thinking about, they're able to discover who they used to be. Fluttershy doesn't think she's supposed to care for animals because that's not what her cutie mark is showing her, but she wants to try to solve the problem that Rainbow Dash has, since she's trying to care for animals and can't do it, and in the process Fluttershy is able to get her memories back by remembering what it is she loved to do. Cue the music number, cue the parade, cue all of the resolution that we need for the episode. Well, except for one part. Right after it looks like everything's been resolved about the whole cutie mark mismatch problem, Twilight gets abducted. Okay, that's a little too serious. No, she actually just gets teleported away by her mentor, Princess Celestia, who sings a whole nother, actually really good song to her about how Twilight has come such a long, long way.
You've come such a long, long way.
Hey, that's what I said. Twilight has grown so much over the course of this show and has learned so much about friendship that now it's time for her to take on a different responsibility. She begins a transformation sequence that's straight out of Beauty and the Beast. And then whammo blammo, wings. But these aren't just here to piss off the fandom. No, this comes with a promotion for Twilight, as she's now elected the first Princess of Friendship. Which, if you think sounds stupid, there's also somebody else in this show who's the Princess of Love. I'll remind you again, this show is made for kids. From then on, Twilight now stands side by side with her mentors and takes on a whole new responsibility. This is the standard thing you'd see of all girl bosses, but there's two key reasons why this works. The first point is very deceptively simple, and it's just that Twilight is likable and we've seen her growth. As I alluded to earlier, every episode has to end with Twilight or somebody learning some kind of friendship-related lesson that Twilight is, at the bare minimum, in close proximity to. Like, even if the episode isn't Twilight-centric, it's at least one of her friends or somebody that she knows learning something and overcoming some sort of fault, which means that Twilight is at least getting to be a part of helping other people. Twilight has come a long way by this point. She has learned a lot about friendship. She has learned a lot and grown and been teachable and been likable throughout it. And because we've seen all of this, we're much more receptive and accepting of this kind of change in Twilight. It feels like she has truly earned this. This kind of goes back to what I was saying at the beginning. If you have a character like this that has to achieve some sort of power or promotion or whatnot by the end, but you don't make them likable, you're not really gonna have a good time. The other key reason why this works actually has nothing to do with this episode, but more so where the show takes her from here. Because yeah, Twilight is the princess of friendship, and she's a new magical alicorn, which is like a combination of like a regular horse and a pegasi and a unicorn. But much like what I said before, Twilight's not done growing. From here on out, and particularly in Season 4, the season directly after Season 3, we get into a lot of Twilight's insecurities about being a princess. She doesn't really seem to know what it really means to be a princess. She doesn't know what her responsibilities elicit, or even what she's supposed to do with all of the power that she's been given. I mean, she has a whole musical number about how she feels like she's just kind of waiting in the wings, waiting for some sort of calling to unlock inside of herself. Now, if this were a lesser show, this might come off as whiny or overdramatic, but Twilight isn't really whining. She's just kind of stating how she's feeling. It's interesting to see Twilight in a position where she kind of has everything that she wants, and that kind of makes her feel uncomfortable because she's somebody who's defined by her teachability. She's just kind of stuck wondering what comes next. As she says in her song, I don't know how to travel to a future that I can't see. What I'm getting at is that even when your girl boss achieves whatever status or power they've been looking for, that shouldn't be the end for their journey, because that's how it is in real life. We're always growing and learning, and having a character like Twilight, a character who's defined by their teachability, have to face the quote-unquote burden of success is a very interesting and very good place to take her character. It's very simple-minded to think that one achievement, one promotion defines an entire life. And if that's all your girl boss's arc is, then I think you need to rethink how you're writing them. Lastly, we come to the most infamous part of the girl boss, the fact that their power must come from within. Almost every girl boss has some kind of power locked away inside of them that they must then unlock in order to complete their arc. Now, I'm not going to act like there aren't a lot of cases where this can go poorly in a lot of different stories, but I just think My Little Pony shows us how we can use this kind of idea of storytelling to actually create a satisfying arc. In the Season 4 finale, Twilight's Kingdom Part 1 and 2, our little ponies have to face off against a new big bad guy named Tirek, who's a centaur that can steal people's magic, who actually was in the old 80s show, so that's a pretty cool callback. This two-parter culminates in one final battle between Twilight and Tirek, where Twilight has taken on all of the magic of all of the Alicorn princesses. This was done because Twilight wasn't a princess when Tirek was around, so he wouldn't know to go looking for her to get all of the most powerful magic. Unfortunately, he does eventually find her, and just cue the montage. Right when it looks like the battle's over though, Tirek pulls the old villain card and is like, I'm gonna kill all your friends unless you give me your magic, and of course, Twilight, being the good-hearted pony that she is, decides to give up. Tirek gets all of the most powerful magic in the world, and all is lost. Luckily though, Twilight's able to figure out how to save the day. Her and all of her friends use this magic box that was discovered in the season premiere that every pony had a different key for that they then use to open it and turn into Super Saiyans. And then they blast Tirek with their friendship magic thingy, I don't really know. They send him back to Tartarus, and all is saved. Now, if all you're paying attention to is what I just described, then this might seem like a kind of bullshit Deus Ex Machina. However, this moment is actually the culmination of the entire episode and really the entire season's worth of buildup. As I mentioned before, this box is unlocked via keys that every one of the main 6 has, and they all only get those keys in their specific episodes. Basically, in Season 4, every pony has a specific episode where they have to reaffirm whatever core belief they have. Rarity is tested and must prove that she's still a generous and kind pony. Rainbow Dash is tested and she must prove that she'll always be loyal to her close friends. And so on and so forth. In each of these episodes, every pony's given a different item that eventually turns into the key. It's sort of a physical representation of their inner qualities. Every pony gets one of these, except for Twilight. She receives her key at the end of this episode after reaffirming that she cares more about her friends than her magic. And sure, this is a massive flash of power that all comes from the girl's inner strength, but they only receive that after they've been tested. It's only after Twilight affirms that she cares more about her friends that she gains the power to defeat the bad guy. This is what you want to do with a character who has inner strength like this, or a character that embodies the ideals of whatever story you're telling. If the theme of your story is friendship is magic, then the character should be rewarded for valuing friendship, and they should be punished for not. Twilight and all of her friends embody this ideal, but they don't get it for free. They're constantly tested. Twilight has to choose between potentially destroying the entire world or watching all of her friends die in front of her. Now, you and I may have different takes on what Twilight should have done in this situation, but again, the point of the show is that friendship is magic. You need your friends to be magical. So, in universe, it is the right decision for Twilight to save her friends, and she's rewarded for it. And this is one general thing I see with girl bosses, but also general just paragon heroes in general, characters that are just good and embody whatever qualities the story is going for. Captain America is another character that comes into mind. I mean, he's usually right. He doesn't really have like an arc of overcoming self-doubt or being wrong. But in movies like Winter Soldier, for instance, he's constantly tested in whether or not his belief systems about freedom are actually true. Both Twilight and Captain America embody whatever qualities their story is about. But because of outside influence, their qualities and their beliefs are still tested. And that's how you get conflict out of this and still have a really satisfying conclusion of the characters self-actualizing. So if you have any character, or specifically a girl boss, that is drawing their power from within, think about ways that you can test their beliefs, challenge their qualities, and see how they come out the other end. Because it's only through conflict and resolution that the audience feels satisfied in watching a character's journey. With all of these qualities combined, Twilight Sparkle is the ultimate girl boss. She's a badass alicorn who believes in fighting bad guys and saving the day. But she's also a girl who's deeply tender and loving, willing to extend a hoof to anyone in need. She's a flawed character who can sometimes overthink things and maybe be a little bit crazy. But she's always somebody who's teachable, empathetic, and there for her friends. Twilight Sparkle isn't just smart and brave and courageous and powerful. She's also tender and loving, compassionate and forgiving, a little dorky sometimes and prone to overthinking. But she's still a genius all the same. She's an awesome character that clearly becomes a boss that's also just a girl. And she's not just any girl boss, she's the ultimate girl boss.
Ooh, one more. I can turn a mare into a stallion.
Yup. They them. Why they gotta inject it into everything? They're trying to make me not non-binary.